Good evening. This is the Athens City Shade Tree Commission meeting for November the 8th, 2017. We have no Title 33 issues, so we'll move straight to Title 37 Landscape Ordinance issues. And the first one on the agenda is 12 East Carpenter. So if a representative can come up to the podium, introduce yourself and explain what you'd like us to do.
My name is Christy Goldsberry. I'm the owner of Flats on Carpenter, LLC, which owns the property located at 12 East Carpenter Street, Athens.
I'm Ryan Buckley with Buckley Group Engineering, the site design for the project.
Okay.
We are proposing, initially when we did the project, in the preliminary drawings, when we went through Title 41, we proposed to put in 16 trees. And the idea was to put them along the western side of the lot and along the parking area, and then also put them in between the compact car parking and the standard car parking along the northern portion of the site. And then some other trees scattered around in the sidewalk, and a couple in the, or actually one or two by the patio area. I'll let Ryan describe what we found when we did when we were excavating the site, which we knew we had a challenging site. The site brought surprises along with it, and so we actually excavated out. We thought we had one underground storage tank. We had 4, which was, we got them out of the ground and we remedied the situation to EPA standards, so that was good. So we were cleaning up a site that needed to be cleaned up. But then we also hit a lot of limestone and rock, and it just was a little bit more challenging than we thought it was going to be. So we needed to switch gears on a few things. It wasn't just the landscaping plan, it was also runoff and some other issues that really led us to change the northern portion of the site in between the compact car parking and the standard car parking. So I'll let you talk about that.
So on the western side of the project, which would be the side towards Family Dollar, we originally had trees against that line. As we went through the final design, we had to add a retaining wall there, and due to the close proximity to the property line, excuse me, we had to cantilever the foundation into our property, which cut off any root foundation for trees along this property line. On the northern portion of the property, between the upper and lower parking lot, this grade, we had a steep grade between the 2 parking lots, and to prevent erosion and continuous dirt flow down, plugging the storm down here, we switched to a retaining wall along that wall, or between the 2 parking lots also, which eliminated those trees. And then on the far northeast portion is where we hit the limestone rock. And it was just really, really hard rock that we really had to beat out just to get the sidewalk in.
So that created a decrease in our proposed tree landscaping. And so what I proposed is not identical to what, or as far as numbers go, as what we initially had in our Title 41, but it's the best that we can do given the site conditions. Mm-hmm. So I have proposed to put in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We take out the 11 trees that we had to not plant because of rock and plan changes, and then add 7 to the 4 that are already there. That would give us a difference of 2 according to my calculations of what's proposed, or what's required, excuse me. So the site actually requires 13.
Mm-hmm.
I'm proposing we put in 11 if the city will allow me to put trees in the right-of-way, which is something that I have to have special, it's my understanding I have to have special.
Yeah, we can give permission for that.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
But I presented pictures in my email, I don't know if you have them.
Got that.
Yeah, okay, so if you look at the right-of-way picture, which is the first one by the electric pole,
Yeah.
I think there's plenty of space there to do some landscaping and add 3 trees, or some sort of something there.
Well,
That's gonna be right next to where the dumpster area is.
okay.
There's a pole there. Are there electrical lines there?
Yes,
Are they high voltage ones, or are they just the 110 volt ones?
are they?
I don't think I think it's a single feed.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
I don't think it's
Probably
high
isn't the high voltage. I think the high voltage one's on.
I think it's on the other side over by,
Yeah.
on the other side by,
Yeah.
Central Venue.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's it, yeah. The other question I've got is that if we allowed you to plant some of these trees closer, could you fit another 2 trees on this site? For instance, you've got the trees on what would be, I think, the southern edge and probably the southeast corner of the property. If we allowed you to plant them closer together, could
Could
you
you
fit?
show me what you're talking about?
Yeah, come over here.
Okay.
Let's,
I'm having a hard time visioning.
yeah, you've got these trees over here.
Yeah, this
Would
one
it-
would be a new one that
Yeah.
we would have to put in.
Are these existing, or what are these?
Yes, these I have not put in yet, but I've got topsoil in the holes right now.
Okay,
This one's there.
okay. You see, one possibility would be to add a tree there, or maybe add a tree there, if that was possible. Because we would much prefer the number of trees to be on the site.
Right.
And if it was possible
What
to put them
concerns
closer together.
me is this is an ingress and egress, and this
Okay.
is an ingress and egress, and
Okay.
what would concern me would be site.
Okay. What about over here? How
Because I've already had to ask
Okay.
for them to trim this one
Okay.
back.
Yeah. Well, once you start to lift a tree, you can usually see underneath it, and that's the way. But anyway, what about over here? Is there any
Okay,
possibility
over
of more
here-
trees over there?
We might be able to add 2 more there,
Okay.
but
Because as I say, we would prefer the trees to be at the site rather than
right.
in the.
Plan B would be that we plant 2 trees at our other business on Columbus Road.
Yeah, you see, the unfortunate thing is, although this sounds like an attractive plan to all of us, the legislation doesn't give us that freedom.
Okay.
Unfortunately,
Okay.
I think that that we were talking about this before the meeting, and it's one of these unfortunate things. The way that the council adapted the legislation was that they allowed us to bank trees. Which means that you then pay for a tree which then gets planted somewhere else in the city, but
Right.
the city then has to maintain it. So we've essentially reduced your maintenance forever on this project
Okay.
by those two whatever however many trees it is that were missing, and so that is going to require a 2/3 vote of the commissioners to approve tree banking. And you know, your suggestion actually is a novel one. It's certainly one I think.
Well, I mean, we've got a
would
gas
like
station convenience store on Columbus
Yeah.
Road that we're right now adding a drive-through on, and there's a grassy area that we have picnic tables on. I mean, not right now, but
Yeah,
over there, and
yeah,
that would be another
Yeah.
I mean, the site's 2 acres and has tons of trees on it,
Yeah.
but it would be another place to put trees.
yeah. It as I say, it's
But
attractive to the commissioners, but I don't think we are allowed to do it. Unfortunately.
But we won't object to your doing it. That would be great to have more trees.
Yeah, you can always plant more trees. We like that. But as I say, under Title 37, what we can do is give you a variance to plant trees closer together.
Okay.
So that means that if there was a way to plant the 13 required trees on this site, but planting them, say, with 20 feet apart rather than 30 feet, or you know, some closer.
Yeah,
dimension.
we would have to. We would definitely need that
Yeah.
for, by the patio there, and for the right-of-way area.
Yeah, yeah, and as I say, for the planting in the right of way, that's quite often a variance that we give. So
Okay.
I don't think that is going to
Yeah, I would love to try to do that, because that color's ugly, or that corner's ugly right now.
Yes.
And I think it could definitely use it.
Okay, so can we try and see if we can
Yeah.
fit the 13 on there with a reduced spacing?
Absolutely.
And we give you permission to plant in the right of way. I'm looking at my fellow commissioners to make sure there's nobody objecting to this.
So let me ask a quick question then. So the 3 trees that are in the patio area that are shown there now, is that realistic? I mean, I went and looked at it, and it seemed awfully tight. Do we think we can get 3?
Shade
It
trees.
is tight. It is tight.
I mean, is there a, and you folks are more tree people than I, but is there more of a columnar type or
Yes,
something that?
you'd use fastigiate species, which they don't give as much shade as the others.
They don't give as much shade, and they have a shorter lifespan. So then we have to rely on people remembering that they are responsible for those trees.
Yes,
And the vestigial tree, I didn't realize until relatively recently that these trees, not only are they unnatural, but they're shorter lived, and because of the branching pattern, those they break off.
Well, it depends on the species.
Well,
Yeah.
all I know is
The,
when we had that thing at the tree care conference about trimming, and he made it very clear what happens when you have that kind of branching.
Yeah. But anyway, that, to my mind, is a preferred option to having them bought out and banked.
Right,
I
well,
would prefer to see them on the site, and if necessary, close together.
But I would rather have 2 shade trees there than have 3 vestigial trees, because they just don't, they give a little shade, but it's like, a pencil as opposed to an umbrella. Or an umbrella with a handle as opposed to the whole umbrella. So.
Well, I will try to do as many shade trees as I possibly can.
Yeah.
It's only an advantage to me if I do that, because it is a patio area. And so anything that, enhances that area makes sense for me.
Sure.
Because I still haven't rented the property, so I don't know who's going to be there, but, it would make it much more enjoyable,
Yeah.
I would think.
Do you know how long that strip is where you have the 3 trees planted fairly closely?
I've already dug holes, actually. I don't know if anyone looked
I
at
think
it.
if you go by the parking spaces,
It's right here.
It looks like it's three parking spaces, so that's
Yeah.
probably something like 30 feet from one
It
end
is.
to
It's
the
like
other.
30 feet.
Yeah,
So essentially, what we're doing is we're putting trees 15 feet apart, roughly. 10. I mean, and that's close. I agree, but trees can be friendly.
Right, they can. They're known to share through their roots.
Yes. Yeah.
They do share resources.
So as I say, I would much prefer to try and fit all the trees that are required on the site, and give a variance both for the planting in the right of way and to plant them closer together than the 30 feet normally required. And for us to try and work on that.
Okay, awesome.
I can support that.
Yeah.
Okay. In that case, that's what I'll write up for you, and please plant as many as you can.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you.
237 West State Street. Is that your property? You come to the podium and introduce. Oh, I recognise you. Yes.
I brought pictures. I didn't bring.
Is this
enough
just
pictures.
one set?
Yeah, there's one set, and then I've got. We don't need
We
that.
don't need that one now. Yeah, that one you can definitely have that one.
And then
Yeah.
there's 3 sets of the ones that are stapled there.
Okay. Yeah, this almost looks like woodland on one side.
Yep.
Oh, thank you, Michael. Thanks.
So if you could introduce yourselves and just explain what you'd like us to do.
I'm Mike Crothers, I'm with RVC Architects.
And I'm Penny Mullen with RVC Architects.
Based on our shade tree requirement calculations, which is on SD 1.2, we calculate that we need 10 shade trees. Penny recently went to the site and found where the existing trees are, and we counted them up. It looks like we have 19 trees. Based on what I see, at least 12 of them match.
Yeah. If the tree coverage is as good as the satellite picture that we got, one thing you can do when you come into these things is to look at and see if you've got 40% coverage of trees existing. And if you have, you've actually met the requirement. And then it's a case of, well, can you plant trees close to buildings and so on and so forth. But that, I looked at this and eyeballed it and I said, it looks like you're meeting the full 40% requirement. At that point, we don't really care what there is there, as long as it looks like they're going to be shade trees and so on. And so this is a...
We have no intention of removing any of the trees that are there. So.
Yes.
Well, I'd like to point out there are 3 elms, and they may be there now, but don't count on them being there for that long, because when they reach a certain age, they tend to get the Dutch elm disease.
Yeah, but I mean, they've obviously survived well.
Well, I had one in my backyard,
Yeah.
and I was very sad when its end
Yeah.
came. But
And I gather that this is simply because some building work that you're doing on one end has triggered a Title 41 process. Okay, yeah. So I think we're fine with this plan. I don't think there's anything further to say about it. It's a nice wooded site.
Absolutely.
So,
very happy to have mature trees left.
yes. We would much rather see trees left than new trees planted.
And a nice mix of species, too.
Yes. Yeah.
There is.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Great. Have a great day.
Okay. I think what I'll do with the Title 37 is that I believe Rick has got a report on 5 Charles Street, and so I think we'll just add that under this part of the agenda.
Okay.
So if you'd like to give your report on 5 Charles Street.
Yes, very good. Nancy, is it Nancy? Yes. Nancy and I had gone and looked at the property, and we did a tree count and looked at 5 Charles and 4 Euclid together, and we estimated that they needed 4 additional trees. Since then, they have planted 2 large oak trees in the area that we were concerned about, and they've replaced one. In looking at how this is all laid out, it's rather a tight spot, and when these trees get to full size, it's going to cover a lot of area. So in my opinion, I think they've met the requirements based on what I could see there and the 2 trees they've currently planted. And I just think there's just no more area really to plant. They've done their landscaping correctly.
And they have kept the small trees there that they planted originally.
That's correct. They haven't taken anything out. They just added 2 large oak trees, and you're more welcome to just drive by there, and they're right at the edge of the parking lot, which is in a good spot.
Yeah.
So did they meet the shade tree requirement or just the number of trees?
No, go ahead.
I don't think they've met the large shade tree requirement. However, they have planted a bunch of small trees there, and if we group those together in 3s, then they would be meeting the total tree requirement. Now, we don't really approve of that, so they've got around it that way. But I think this is the best compromise that we can have, because otherwise we're liable to be taking out those small trees. And I guess the caveat would be that when those small trees do die, as they will, because small trees don't have the lifespan of the big ones, they'll be expected to replace some of those.
I'm sure they will, because it makes the landscaping's quite nice. They've done a very good job
large shade trees. So I will write it up in that form for you.
Very good.
Good.
All right.
Very clear that we expect the replacement to be shade trees.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, the other thing, and I'd like to say, and we chatted a little bit before the meeting, it's to me it's getting a little frustrating with the number of people who end up coming back and wanting forgiveness. you know, we didn't write any legislation. City council wrote the legislation for this. The mayor signed it into law back when it was passed, and this is what they said we want in our community. And so I want to try to be a little bit more hard-nosed about trying to do that. And anyway, I think that what we did today was fine. I just, you know, it just troubles me, like one of the things that they could have done on Carpenter is gone back to the Zoning Board of Appeals and asked for a variance for a couple of parking spaces and taken some parking spaces out. But it, you know, their choice was to come here and say, hey, can I have forgiveness? I can't get them in. And quite frankly, I'll say this, on that particular project, I think they've made a tremendous improvement to the property. And I think they probably, I don't disagree, they probably ran into issues that they didn't anticipate. So it's not like they, you know, were trying to kind of be shady about what they were doing. I don't believe any of that. But the reality is, you know, it's the tree that ends up being, you know, and again, city council and the mayor have said this is what we want in our community. So anyway, that's just, I just needed to get that off my chest a little bit. So
Thank you.
Okay.
And you know, we'll look to our council representative to help us maybe modify the legislation again. I mean,
Well, if it needs
because
to
I
be,
do
yeah.
think this issue of if there's a property owner who has got other property in the area, and they can accommodate the trees on that, and we can clearly see there is not a way to easily do it on the current one, then that I think should be.
And I think that's a great idea, because then we don't have to take care of them.
Yes.
You know, we don't have to to maintain them the whole time.
Right. So this I think is possibly an idea we need to take up with city council.
Go ahead.
It's probably, you know, it's time for the conversation, just to revisit it, because I mean, you know, like I was mentioning to John earlier that I'm very new to this position, so I'm still I still need to learn the history and the backstory and understand where we're here.
We can go over that with you.
Okay.
But it has been a number of years since the legislation was changed to include the tree banking. We've now got some experience of tree banking. I think well, it's working from my perspective, although I'd still like to see where the trees are actually going in the city.
If I may add to that, is that you put the onus back on the applicant.
Yes.
When they say they're going to plant trees, they should come back to you and say, here are the pictures, this is what we've done. See? Because I'll be honest with you, I don't have much staff, and tree searching is not the top of my list. You know?
So this would be a requirement that for all of the
That goes in the legislation.
Correct.
Modify
Put it in the
the resolution. Say you have to, you know, as a part of the it's a two-step process.
Right.
You come in and you present what you're going to do, and then you come back and say, here's what we did, and show pictures.
And in this day and age, with technology, it's so simple. They snap with their phone.
Yes.
They can email the picture, and even you could put in there a picture of the email to the chair to verify.
Right.
And not necessarily have to come back in.
That's a good point.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
You know,
Right.
because
That's
a lot
a very
it's
good
time
idea.
consuming for everyone, but the proof would be in the pudding there. Basically, is that it's been done.
And what about putting in something for maintenance? So this is the cost of a tree and having installed, and then here is an estimate of the yearly maintenance cost to the city. I mean, maybe that should be done if we're having, you know, if people are saying, oh, well, it's really better just to bank.
Well, I would not make it so legislatively prohibited where it's going to be so difficult that they don't want to plant the tree. You know, we want them to plant trees, so let's not make it so difficult for them to achieve that and add more things to it.
Well, no, this would be if they decide, well, there's just not room, you know.
In other words, the tree banking at the moment is just the cost of planting a tree
Oh, I
somewhere.
see what you're saying.
But I think Lee is suggesting that tree, that cost be elevated to include some years of maintenance.
Oh, well,
on
yeah,
the
that could be
tree,
good, yeah.
as well. But that was an issue that Ron and your predecessor said we didn't want to delve into too much until we understood what the cost really was. And I think that again may be a revision that we need to look at.
Maybe, yeah, address it again.
And the other thing is to have, if we're going to rewrite it, to have maybe something, a better way to enforce it. Because at this point, we're relying on them to either sell the property, if they don't follow the plan, to sell the property or add on to the building.
Yeah, well, currently, I mean, we can go 2 planting seasons?
Yeah, spring,
Right.
spring and fall.
Right, but they have 2 years to complete the project.
Well, that needs to be clarified so that it becomes spring and fall rather than 2 years.
Yeah.
Because I think it says 2 planting seasons,
Yeah.
and that's where the argument comes in.
Because we do have some projects that'll take the full 2 years,
Yeah.
depending on the size.
You know, in some places, I've been told, in some cities, the last permit is not given to a business until the work is actually finished, until the trees are in there, so.
We actually have a requirement, I think, at the moment that all the hardscape has got to be complete. Even if the trees aren't there, we've got to see the holes that the trees are going to go into, and that came about because of some people claiming they were going to plant trees, and all of a sudden, well, where are you going to put them? Oh.
And actually putting in a hole even a year ahead of time gives a hole with proper soil and everything, gives your tree that is then planted a much better chance of success.
Right.
And you might remember that.
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Okay, so we've got a number of items there that we might want to look at in terms of revision for legislation, and we'll have a session on that at some point. Looks like we're not going to get a report from Ron Lucas this week. And I think what we'll do is we'll just move to unless there's any other business that people want to raise, we'll just move to the minutes of the last meeting.
We still, well, I guess maybe we should approve the minute. Well, the one thing I wanted to say, Jeff hasn't gotten back to us when a good time to do the bike path clearing at this point.
I think it will have to be after Thanksgiving, just based on the time it's taking for stuff to die back this year.
Yeah, okay. Well, I will recommend that we accept the minutes as presented.
And I will second. Surprise.
Are there any objections to approving the minutes of the last meeting? Hearing none, we have minutes of the last meeting. The next meeting will be December 13th, 4 p.m. in the City Council chamber. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.